and our final chapter, chapter 12. Our reader is Afra, Our Lady of Santa Marta. Afra?
Chapter 12, Our Lady of Santa Marta. I couldn't believe the destruction the hurricane had caused along the beach. Before the storm, the beach was probably 1,000 feet wide from the waterline to the top of the beach dune. After the storm, it was only about 200 feet wide. In addition, sand to a depth of at least 10 feet had been washed away, and I could see huge rocks and ancient reefs that used to be covered by sand. It wasn't just I who was confused. Many deer, bear, and wild hogs were wandering aimlessly around the beach dune. I guess they were confused and lost. Most animals use smells to mark the boundaries of their territories. As best I could figure, the storm stripped the leaves, branches, and bark off nearly every tree and bush, and probably removed whatever scent the animals use to define boundaries and navigate by. I walked for miles up the beach towards Jupiter, hoping to find something that had washed up. About halfway between Hypoluxo Island and the Jupiter Inlet, I saw an odd-shaped structure sticking out of the ground in the middle of the beach. Even from a distance, I knew it couldn't be a rock. As I got closer, I realized it was a piece of a shipwreck. Finally, I might find something of value as a result of this disastrous storm. But this ship looked very odd. It didn't look like any ship I'd ever seen before, and it was mostly buried in the middle of the beach. How is this possible? How did the storm push a ship this far ashore and then bury it with sand at the same time the storm was eroding 10 feet of sand from the beach? I got on my hands and knees and began digging around the edges. I dug for almost an hour, trying to find the edges of the broken hull. I dug until I uncovered some writing on the hull. I could make out the words, but did not know what they meant. It said, Nuestra Señora de Santa Marta. I had no idea what the words meant, but I kept digging. In another few minutes, my fingers hit something hard. I soon uncovered the top of a box lying next to the hull. I dug faster, and before long, I could see the whole box. Actually, it was a chest. I tried to lift it, but it was too heavy. The chest was about 3 feet long by 2 feet wide, with a large metal latch inscribed with a cross. Since I couldn't move it, I lifted the latch and pushed the lid up. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. The entire chest was filled with hundreds of sparkling gold coins. They were unlike any coins I had ever seen. Each coin had a cross on one side, surrounded by strange markings and words that I could not understand. What I could understand, though, were the words Philip V and the dates, which ranged from 1711 to 1715. The chest was too heavy to lift or to carry, so I reburied it. I took one coin with me and ran as fast as I could back down the beach towards Hypoluxo Island. When I arrived at the house, I learned that Papa had already set sail back to the house of refuge, and the Dimmicks and the Gears were up the lake at their homesteads, beginning to clear the land to build their houses. This was just as well because it would not have been wise to tell everyone about the treasure I had found. I told Mama the story of my find. I am not sure that she believed me until I showed her the coin that I brought back with me. When she saw it, her eyes grew large, and she took it slowly from my hand. "Mercy," she said, and caught her breath. "What is it?" She flipped it over and bounced it in her hand. "Charlie, you better go get your Uncle Will right now, and don't tell anyone else about this." I found Uncle Will repairing hurricane damage to his house. When I told him I found a buried trunk full of gold coins, he dropped his hammer onto the ground and hurried back with me. Along the way, he asked me every kind of question he could think of about the buried ship and the coins. When he saw the coin, he looked even more shocked than Mama. He bit it and left tooth marks in the metal. "Charlie," he said, "this is gold. How many of these are there?" "I don't know," I answered. "A few hundred, I guess." "A few hundred?" Uncle Will looked like he was about to fall over. He wanted to leave right then to go back to the shipwreck, but Mama announced it was too dark for us to walk up the beach alone, especially with confused animals roaming around. Uncle Will said he knew that Philip V was the King of Spain in the early 1700s, but he had no idea what a Spanish ship with a chest full of gold coins was doing buried on the beach in Florida. I hardly slept that night. As soon as the sun broke over the horizon, I was dressed and out the door, running up the muddy trail that connected our house to Uncle Will's. Together we rowed Uncle Will's small boat, Bessie B, across the lake, hiked through the jungle on the beach ridge, and began our long walk north. Uncle Will brought ropes and a knife so that we could cut some branches, bind them together into a sled, and drag the chest home. It took us several hours to reach the wreck site. Less of the ship was visible than the day before. The ocean was already beginning a steady reburial of the ship, with each crashing wave at high tide depositing more sand on the beach. It took a little extra digging to find the chest, but I didn't care about the extra work as long as we found it. While I dug, Uncle Will searched the jungle on the other side of the beach dune for sturdy tree limbs to construct the sled. After a couple of hours' work, the chest was out of the ground, and the sled was built. We wanted to dig around the wreck site to look for the possible treasure, but it was getting late, and we were worried that dragging the heavy sled would put us home after dark. We decided to head home and return the next day to look for more loot. We arrived home just after nightfall. Mama had sent a message down to the Orange Grove house with one of the gear boys shortly after Uncle Will, and I had left that morning. The message said nothing of the treasure. It only said, "Urgent, return home at once." So by the time Uncle Will and I dragged the chest out of the Bessie Bee and up the porch steps, Papa was standing on the porch waiting for us. We brought the chest into the house, opened it, and began sorting through the coins by candlelight. We counted 456 solid gold coins. Papa said that any one of them would make a poor man rich. Then Papa remembered a story he'd heard from Captain Armour, who had heard it from treasure hunters passing by the lighthouse. In late July 1715, a flotilla of 11 Spanish ships, each loaded with gold, silver, and emeralds from South America, set sail from Havana, Cuba. But a few days into the voyage back to Spain, the fleet was thrown off course by a massive hurricane and smashed into the shallow reefs off Florida's east coast. More than 1,000 Spanish sailors died, and all 11 ships were destroyed. The Spanish sent rescue and salvage ships from Havana and the Spanish fort Castillo de San Marcos in St. Augustine to rescue the survivors and salvage the treasure. However, the Spanish were able to locate only 10 of the 11 ships. The ship they never found was named Nuestra Señora de Santa Marta, which means Our Lady of Santa Marta. "That's the name of the ship I found," I exclaimed. Papa speculated that the Spanish never found the Santa Marta because it was much further south than the 10 other Spanish ships, which had wrecked along the beaches from the St. Lucie Inlet to the Sebastian Inlet. The Spanish probably had not thought to look so far south. Then the ship was buried under 10 feet of sand and disappeared. We inspected each of the 456 coins very closely. Over time, Papa and Mama ordered books about Spanish coins. They also sent sketches of the coins to one of Papa's brothers, who was a professor at Harvard near Boston, Massachusetts. After many months of ordering and reading books and corresponding with professors at Harvard, we learned that the coins were all made in Mexico and Nueva Granada, modern-day Colombia, between the years 1711 and 1715. The words on the coins translated to Philip V, by the grace of God, King of Spain and the Indies. Also, each coin was marked with 8S, which meant 8 escudos. These were the largest gold coins made by the Spanish and were referred to as doubloons by the English colonists because the coin was double the value of the 4 escudo coins. Forever afterwards, our family simply referred to them as doubloons. After a long night of counting and inspecting the coins, we went to bed. We planned to return to the wreck site the next day with Papa and shovels to see what else we could find. But we were awakened the next morning by a howling wind that slammed the shutters against the side of the house. The rain and strong winds lasted all day and into the next night. We couldn't go to our treasure search. The next day came and went, and it was still pouring rain. The third day came and went with no relief in sight. By the fourth day, the strong storm had passed and the sun was shining. Papa, Uncle Will, and I packed our digging tools and headed north up the beach. However, the beach was totally different. The 3 straight days of wind and waves from the northeast had returned all the sand to the beach. We could not find the wreck of the Santa Marta. We searched in vain for hours only to run out of daylight. We returned day after day, but to no avail. The autumn storms continued to pile more and more sand on the beach, burying our treasure ship deeper and deeper. As the foliage returned to the beach dune, it became more and more difficult for us to be certain we were even digging in the right part of the beach. After several weeks of searching in vain, Papa had to return to his job at the House of Refuge. Mama, Lily, and I went with Papa back to the Orange Grove house. Uncle Will returned to farming and tending to his gardens. The chest of 456 doubloons was buried in our backyard at the foot of a giant banyan tree and dug up only periodically over the next 3 generations, whenever someone needed to pay for something very important, such as more land or a new sailing boat. As for the Santa Marta, she is still there, buried since August 1715 in the sands of the beach between Hypaluxo Island and the Jupiter Inlet. Her remaining treasure, estimated by the Spanish crown to have been worth millions, has never been found. Her final resting place was known only by my family, and we never told anyone.
And that's it, my friends. We hope you enjoyed the story, The American Jungle by Harvey Oyer, a true Florida adventure. Adventures are still to be had today in modern Florida. Come visit us at the Ann Norton Sculpture Gardens.